Okay, so last week we talked about the Ramban at the end of Parshas Boi. Ramban, as we discussed, describes what it is that a person should get out of the Seder. That's what we talked about. And really, to sum it up, the Ramban says that the great miracles that Hashem brought in Egypt were to show, number one, that He exists, number two, that He's not so transcendent that He can't be immanent as well. He's both Kodesh, 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 totally removed, and at the same time omnipresent. And not only that, there's a thing called hashgacha, meaning that Hashem cares, so to speak, what we do. He wants a relationship with us. And also those miracles were to show to us that He can do anything once. He's omnipotent. And the last thing the Ramban says is that through pre-announcing these miracles to Moshe, this would once and for all demonstrate that Hashem speaks to His Nevi'im and confides with them. And as the Ramban says, on this the whole Torah rests, because only the Jewish people only heard the first two mitzvahs, Mipi Hashem. And the rest of the Torah comes to us by Moshe, who was probably the most elevated holy stenographer in all of history, because basically what Moshe did was to copy down verbatim what Hashem told him. And of course, seeing as we weren't there at the time, it had to be demonstrated and validated that Hashem does speak to people, human beings, and confides in them. Because on that, says the Ramban, the entire Torah rests. And then at the end, if you remember, the Ramban says that from these great public miracles, by imbuing the knowledge, the memory of these great public miracles into ourselves and passing it down to our children, that through constantly doing this, so many mitzvahs, Zeichel Etzias Mitzrayim, and being mechaven to that event, eventually a person gets to a point of understanding that everything that happens to him is really miraculous. And as we said, even though that a person is born under a mazal from the lashon, the flow, nazila, maybe we could turn the air conditioning off, it's a little bit roasting. So, thanks a lot. I appreciate that. So that even though a person has a mazal, but it's possible, miraculously, hidden miracles, to change what's going to happen to a person. And that is why the Torah, says the Ramban, is full of promises about what will or what will not happen to the Jewish people should they teach to keep the Torah. Yoreh Malkosh, you won't have to worry about bandits entering your land, etc., etc. And if you don't come to keep the Torah, then all the dire perils that will befall the Jewish people, all of these things are all in Olam Hazeh. Why don't we see any mention of Olam Haba? So the Ramban basically explains that it's poshet, it's simple, it's self-evident, that a person will be rewarded for a spiritual action, a mitzvah, in a place of spirituality, meaning Olam Haba. What is not clear, and what the Torah has to stress, and therefore that's why the Torah goes to great lengths to mention all of the rewards and punishments in Olam Hazeh, is counterintuitive. I wouldn't necessarily know that a person would be rewarded or, God forbid, punished for his performance or his failure, his transgressing of a mitzvah, doing an aveira, in this world, in a physical world like this. Comes along the Torah to says no. And that's really the bottom line of what a person should be intuiting, should be internalizing at the Seder, is that everything that happens to me is miraculous. If I do a mitzvah, Hashem will reward me, not just in Olam Haba, even in this world, and God forbid the reverse. That is the basic lesson of the Ramban. So the Ramban is basically talking about Yetzias Mitzrayim on the level of Pshat. What we want to do tonight is talk about on a more mystical level, which is really the Ramkhal's approach, Chaim Netzato. So the Ramkhal discusses, his main point is the effect of us performing mitzvahs during the Seder, even without the proper machshava. Clearly, when a person has the correct kavanah and the correct machshava, this adds immeasurably.
What's machshava?
Thought. The correct thoughts, thanks for stopping me, the correct thoughts add immeasurably to the value of our mitzvahs. But the essence of the mitzvahs of the Seder are to do the mitzvahs, the physical actions. And the Ramkhal says that this actually causes a physical change in our bodies. It's not just, of course, it is commemorative on a certain level, the Seder. The Seder is not just commemorative, it actually causes a physical change in our metzius. And this is the point we'll elaborate on. Let me give you a very basic example. Let's say that you go to a Seder somewhere and you're not really into it, not you but somebody, and eat the matzah. Eat the matzah. So probably the schar for your matzah is like on the Richter scale from 1 to 1,000,000, it's 1. And if you're the holiest Jew in the world, probably your schar is 1,000,000. Now let's say you go to a Reform Seder, Chas v'chalila, and there's a very talented, clever, how do you say, what's the female of a rabbi? Rabbit? Rabbanit. I don't know if you spell rabbinit. A lady rabbi, and she expounds and has all these amazing conceptual ideas, and probably she's been studying Kabbalah on the internet, and she comes up with all these amazing ideas, and you sit at this Seder and you have these fantastic ideas. So basically you have the 6 zeros without the 1. You have gornisht mit gornisht. In other words, machshava, I'm assuming that she said things that were true, but machshava without the maisa is nothing. Maisa without the machshava is always something. So the Ramkhal describes how even the bare performance of the mitzvahs changes a person. Yetzias Mitzrayim, and of course every Seder, because we plug, when we sit at the Seder, into 3,500 years of Yetzias Mitzrayim. And we'll talk about that. Yetzias Mitzrayim created a fundamental change in the mahus of Klal Yisrael, in the substance of Klal Yisrael. In other words, even, for example, a baby boy before he has a bris milah, he has a lower ability, the body has a lower ability to ingest spirituality. So even without Kabbalah Torah, the mere fact of Yetzias Mitzrayim effected a fundamental change in our ability to makabel the Torah. Let's go from the beginning. Adam Harishon was on a very high spiritual level. Even though that he lived in a physical body, but even physical things can be on a very high level. And when someone on that very high spiritual level does physical things, it doesn't make him more gashmi. It doesn't make him more physicalized, which is not the case with us. Adam's body was as though it was transparent. His body wasn't connected to Gashmias, so it's a paradox in a way. But on the one hand, he was in a physical body, but he wasn't Gashmi. Any time he did anything physical, that didn't make him more physical. The soul shone through his body, and the light was not dimmed by the body. However, because Adam was physical, the body had the potential to become Gashmiistic, Gashmi, more physicalized. And of course, that's what happened when he ate from the fruit. At that point, even though Rav Dessler says it was an Aveir Lishma, Adam Harishon made a calculation, he understood that if the Yetzer Hara, which up to that point existed only in potential outside of his body, so by bringing that Yetzer Hara into his body and conquering it, that would be a bigger Kiddush Hashem. Of course, he made a mistake, and that was the Aveira, but it was an Aveira Lishma. But nevertheless, once the Yetzer Hara was not just outside of him, but was now inside him, so that caused his body to become more Gashmias, and after the Chet, the body then desires the things that the body desires, Kavod, Taiva. The point is, when we do a mitzvah, this is really the point I'm going to keep hammering home. When we do a mitzvah, our body changes. Our nefesh habahamis, the physical part of us, becomes elevated. It becomes, the body itself becomes more inclined to do good. And chas v'chalila, when we do an aveira, so the body becomes, the nefesh habahamis becomes lower. Nefesh habahamis literally means the animal soul, the part of us which is physical. That can be raised in a human being anyway, from being on a lower level to a higher level. Adam Rishon, as we said, was on a very, very high level. The Chet of Adam Rishon meant that the human race could not be misdabek in Hashem in this world, could not cleave to God in this world. Why? So as we said, the Metzias, the reality of this world, is you can't be here without a body. So what happens when a person dies? And now in order to be, because Adam Rishon brought death into the world, death was necessary in order, because the body became so physicalized, so lowered, that, I have to put a pause here, the Ramkhal believes that because the body is the partner with the soul, in earning the soul and the Olam Haba, it's not fair that the body should not receive its reward, Now, Adam Rishon theoretically before the Chet could have gone to Olam Haba, body and soul together. Once the body became polluted by the Aveira, it was not possible anymore now for that to happen. Therefore, the body, we have to go through a process of death. When at that point the neshama separates from the body, it goes to a place called the Olam HaNeshamois, the world of souls. And eventually, when Mashiach comes, in the Asid Lavo, in the time to come, the neshama and the body are reunited to be nana, to have this supernal pleasure of the Ziv Hashchina, the radiance of the divine presence. But of course, the neshama cannot go to Olam Haba without the guf, because why? The guf was instrumental, was his partner in doing the mitzvahs in this world.
But what about with regards to Gehenna? The body calls the neshama to do an avera, so then the body should go to Gehenna. Why is the neshama going to Gehenna?
That's a good question.
Could be.
I'm not sure. I don't know enough to tell you the answer to that question. It could be one of two answers. One answer is that essentially the guf has its agenda, but a person, it says the Yetzer Hara is a malach. And if Kodesh Baruch Hu didn't help a person, he wouldn't be able to stand up to the malach. The Yetzer Hara is a malach, much stronger than you. But it doesn't say anywhere that the Yetzer Tov is a malach. The Yetzer Tov is a person's seichel. A person who doesn't use his seichel, it's because the person didn't use his seichel that he ended up doing the Aveira. So it's the responsibility of the neshama more than the guf. I think that's the answer. I'm not sure.
Could it be that the purifying process for a neshama is going to Gehenna, and in turn the purifying process for a body is to die and decompose and then be brought back?
That's very good. Yeah. I mean, there's a thing called chibut hakeva, that a person, when the body goes through a lot of pain in the grave, and there's but exactly where the pain's coming from is it, there's also the neshama gets thrown from one side of the world to the other. It's called kafakela. There are many things which we don't want to think about in too great detail about what happens after a person dies. But let's say that that's the case, that the process of decomposition and the pain of that is the body's tikkun. The body and the neshama will be reunited. Now, Adam Arisha brought so much darkness into the world, so much ra, through that chet, that the only way man could purify his body, there you go, to be a kli fit to bask in the Shechina. Although I'm not sure the body was necessarily responsible, but seeing as the body was part of the Aveira, so the body also has to be purified as well. So to be a kli fit to bask in the ziv of the Shechina, so it either has to be, this is talking about mankind in general, man either has to work on himself very, very hard, or he has to go through Yisurim, through afflictions. Not quite what I said before. We're not leave that about the decomposition of the body. Let's just talk about mankind in general. Mankind, the body of man is now inhabited by this Ra, and for this Ra to be evicted, to be expunged, requires a tremendous amount of work or Yisurim, suffering. In the Jewish idea, suffering is never vindictive. Suffering is a kapara. Yisurim always come to cleanse. It's like the bleach. Not a very pleasant thing, but it whitens a person. So the only way that a person could purify the body to be a kli fit is to work on himself very hard, or to go through Yisurim. It's only in this way that the guf could be changed. As we said, punishment, affliction, Yisurim, suffering, has the ability within them to purify a person. Only Adam, Yitzhak, Yaakov, Noach, and some say Mesushelach were able to work on themselves to the degree that they didn't need to go through these Yisurim. So those 20 generations between Adam and Abraham, hundreds of years with no Torah and mitzvahs, one reason is that the world would be, just being in this world, putting up with being in this world, would be a process of cleansing. The 7 mitzvahs did not purify. They didn't make you better. They just preserved the social structure. It was to preserve mankind, a form for mankind, but there was no tikkun in the mitzias. The flood, the Dora Palaga, that didn't fix the world. So what happens basically is Yetzias Mitzrayim is that Klal Yisrael, in order to be purified, in order to be the Am Hashem, in order to receive the Torah, go into an accelerated process of Yisurim, of affliction and suffering, in order that they can now be ready. And the guf they'll be able to be purified, that their bodies will be able to receive the Torah. And as it says that the Har Sinai, the Jewish people, were like Odom Rishim Kodem Achet. Of course, with the Chet of the Egel, that all fell apart. But right then and there, when we received the Torah, we reached the level of Odom Rishim before the Chet. Now, on the night of the Seder, we reenact that Yitzhak. Derech Hashem is going to say, and we're going to see it in a second, that Jewish time is not really linear. It's cyclical. It's a bit like when you were a kid, everybody I'm sure had a train set. Yeah. So the train set goes through the station, into the tunnel, over the bridge. Every week is really a cycle. The same, when we get back to the station, it's called Shabbos. That's the same Shabbos as Shabbos Bereshis. It's the same mitzias from a spiritual point of view. That's the spiritual hashpa'ot, the influences from upstairs on every Shabbos are the same as Shabbos Bereshis. And similarly with Sukkot, Pesach. So on Pesach, basically we plug into 3,000 years of Yetzias Mitzrayim. The same spiritual landscape is there. is there. And if we plug into it in the right way, we experience the Yetzias Mitzrayim in the same way. So as I said, the Yetzirah from Mitzrayim, the suffering in Egypt, was the cleansing of the Ra. And on the night of Pesach, that Ra is taken out of us again. It's a tremendous opportunity. However, we have to be mechazik this process by eating the moror. Again, this is not something commemorative. This is actually physically, when we eat the moror, we change. We are taking the Ra out of ourselves. Let's maybe look now, and we'll look.
How does that work? Because the moro is better. So why eating better, that's taking out better? Shouldn't it?
It's to accelerate the process of the Yisurim that we had in Mitzrayim. It's we'll see if we'll look over here. This is something called Maimar HaChochma. It's the first page. It says Inyan. Actually, that looks wrong to me. Let me see it. No, let me see this. Yeah, it's the second page. I stapled it wrong. No, here we go. You should have something that says Maimar HaChochma. This is back to front. Okay, sorry. Apologies. Here we are. Inyan Seder Leil Pesach. Right, it's page Kuf Ayin. I'm going to read in Hebrew quickly and I'll translate. Inyan Seder Shel Pesach. Maimar HaChochma by the Ramkhal. Page Kuf Ayin. Hinei, Yetzias Mitzrayim. As the process of the coming out of Egypt, Nivaru Yisrael, the Jewish people were clarified, and Nivdolu was separated, Mikol Ha'amim, from all the nations, Lios Misalim, to be elevated, B'madregosam, in their level, B'madregas Ha'noshias Ha'chumrias, from this physical level of the rest of mankind, Ulies Royim, and to be fit, ready, Lehisater, to be crowned, Ba'ataras HaKedusha, with the crowns of holiness. Umash ad oisa hasman haya choshech chumrius misgaba beguf, and as I mentioned before, as up till this point, the darkness of physicality had dominated the body. V'gorim la'or haTorah v'hakadosha shelo ya'ir, and caused that the light of the Torah. So of course, the Torah was in existence. The Ramban says 2,000 years before the creation of the world. So the Torah was already there. It says, right, that Avram Avinu, all the of us were able to keep the Torah. How were they able to do that? The answer is that they had the eyes to look into the Metzias and see the Torah. The Zohar Kodesh says, Hashem looked into the Torah and created the world. The world is a reflection of the Torah. So conversely, the of us were able to look at the world and see Torah. That's how they were able to keep all the mitzvahs. Now, but that basically for the rest of mankind, the Chet of Adam Arishan and the chumrius, the physicality of this world, prevented the light of the Torah from shining. Hinei achash shesovli Yisrael inui v'hashibur, after the Jewish people had suffered from the affliction and the servitude, the great servitude, shesovlu, that they put up with, nispaisa midas hadin. In other words, the midas hadin was appeased. The Jewish people were now ready to receive the Torah because they'd suffered. As we said, suffering is a kapara. V'nisha hamakatreg beli taina, and the accuser was left without an accusation. V'nizmanu le'or ba'or helyonu, and they were now prepared to be radiated with the supernal light. V'hinei b'layla zeh, on this night, kol zeh mischadesh, all of this is renewed, umisoire, and reawakened, ma shenaseh b'rishona, as it was in the beginning, v'zeh atzmo siyah el ha'geula achrona shitaseh, and this itself is an aid for the eventual final redemption that will come to pass. Meaning, and we'll go into this in slightly more detail as well, that every time we go through a Seder, we're mitchazik in this geula, which is basically, right, that's what the geula, that's Pesach, that's the geula. But that geula achrona that's going to come is fortified every year by our going through the Seder. By us performing the Seder, by us living through the Seder, by us doing the Seder, doing all the mitzvahs, this builds an edifice which will eventually, as he says at the end here, bring the Geula Shalema. V'amnam ikah Seder toli b'dalad devarim. The essence of the Seder relies on 4 things. V'heim Pesach, Matzah, Moro, v'dalad koises. That's the Pesach sacrifice, the Matzah, and the Moro, and the 4 cups. V'atan v'inyanam. Now we're going to explain what's all about. Hinei tziruf hagolus kava biarnu shezeh haya ma she'titahe es Yisrael. We've already explained that the golus, the exile, was the thing that purified the Jewish people and removed from them the zuama. Zuama is literally means filth. It's a spiritual concept of the nachash, of the snake, that it's really the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara, the zuama, the spiritual filth, literally, that was encrusting the Jewish people, was now, the suffering we went through was now removed from us. And sorry, I lost the place. In order that they can afterwards receive the light of Kedusha. This is the idea of the Moro, as we mentioned before. Shehu v'yamoro es chayehem, as it says in the Pasuk, that Paro embittered their lives. V'ulam k'shegi azman. However, when the time arrived for them to be redeemed, sheyegalu. Chutzrach sheyegale lehem gilui mo'or kedushoso yisborach ubo yizdabku nishmosehem shel Yisrael v'yimshechu acharov v'yisalu mishiflosom v'yisporodu min hatuma shehu shkuim ba v'zenas al yidei korban Pesach. Long sentence. Basically what we're talking about is, I think I understand here, Sumeira, the turn aside from doing evil. All the evil had been, expunged from us, taken out from us. But we didn't have the spiritual capability of elevating ourselves just by the removal of the evil. We needed some outside force to elevate us, as he says here, which is the Korban Pesach. When the time came for their redemption, there was Hashem revealed a light of holiness. And through this light of holiness, the Jewish people were able to attach their souls attach their souls to Hashem, and through this light of holiness, they were drawn out of the quagmire of Mitzrayim, out of the tumah, and raised up from their lowliness and separated from their spiritual impurity, that they were wallowing in it. And this was done through the Korban Pesach. In other words, the Moro was the Sumeira. That took all the evil out of us. The Korban Pesach now was the Aseh Tov, was the positive, energy, which was able to bring us out of Mitzrayim. Ubona alehem mishchu chulechem shpirushusam mishchu yedechem modazara. That's the pasuk that says, "Withdraw your hands and take." Withdraw your hands from modazara. V'kchu lechem tzon shel mitzvah, and take to yourselves the lamb of the mitzvah, meaning the Pesach, the Paschal lamb, Pesach. V'amnam od hutzruch Yisrael shia gufa muchan u'mezuman lo harui. So now, what happened? The process is as follows. We got rid of the Ra. We've got the mitzvahs aseh of the Korban Pesach. But in order to fix this in us, this Kedusha, so that's why we need to eat a spiritual food which has no Yetzer Hara in it, which is the matzah for 7 days. These 7 days in the year. Shehi mozon b'bechinas Yetzer Tov levad, which is food which has the aspect of only Yetzer Tov without any Yetzer Hara at all. In other words, that's, so to speak, the cement that seals inside us for those 7 days, a year, the Kedusha that we imbibed by going through the Seder. And of course, nowadays we don't have the Korban Pesach. But that's the process. Ubios nizonim b'zeh yomim elo, and to be fed from this in these days. And Nishara, it will remain hatoloda, the effect of this good effect for all of the year, lios kol hashana muchanim lekedusha. Right, the whole world, we will be prepared for kedusha. We will be, by going through the Seder in the right way, as I said before, our bodies are rendered susceptible, prepared to receive kedusha throughout the rest of the year. The matzah seals that within inside us. Omnom, Inyan now. So that's we had the Mora, which is the Sur Meirah. We have the Korban Pesach, which is basically elevating us. That's the Aseh Tov, and the Matzah, which seals this Kedusha in us for the whole year. Omnam. Inyan Adalakosas. Now let's talk about the 4 cups. The 4 cups, who Shenei Yodua, Shemadregos Hasitra Achrahim. Haim 4. The levels of the Yetzer Hara, the Sitra Achra, is literally the Tzad Shekeneged, the other side. The other side of Kedusha, the side of Tumah, are 4. Just like there are 4 letters in Hashem's name, so there are 4 exiles which represent the 4 aspects of the opposition to Hashem in this world. And they are represented by the 4 exiles of Babylon, Persia. We just got through Purim. Then we have Greece, Yovan, and finally Rome. So these 4 exiles each have a bechina, which I'll discuss later if we have the time, which are keneged, which stand opposed to the 4 letters of Hashem's name. The Maharal goes into great detail in this. Maybe at Hanukkah we'll do more in detail, but that's the idea of the 4 cups. The 4 cups come to oppose, so to speak, to be mavatal, the koyach of these 4 exiles. Ulechein shaltu ma'acha cheto shel Odom. Therefore, after this opening of the door, so to speak, by Odom Arishan, these 4 exiles were able to, these 4 powers were able to rule over man. Ulechein hayu misnagdos el kedusha, they oppose holiness, vahatov, and the goodness, shalo yimtza ba'olam. Their idea is that they should not be in the world. For Yisrael segurim b'socham. Now this is a Kabbalistic idea that what's called the klipot. The klipa is a shell which prevents the light from shining in. And the Jewish people, so to speak, were encased through these 4 exiles with the klipot sealed inside them, in order that they couldn't get out, and the light couldn't shine in either. Until Hashem shone on them with His great power. V'shaver, and He broke through, He shattered the 4 klipot, these v'hotzi Yisrael mitocham, and He brought the Jewish people out from these 4 klipot, which, by the way, and we'll discuss this some other time, Mitzrayim was the tamsis, was the summation, was the distillation of all of these 4 exiles, all rolled up into one. But after Mitzrayim, when we go out from Mitzrayim, so we still have to be mavatal these 4 exiles throughout the history. So it's Daled Golus, the 4 exiles, Hamuskarim Parsha, which are mentioned in the Parsha. Ulam Ze Ase B'Ha'ir Al Yisrael Daled Osios Hashem Baruch Hu. This, the way the Jewish people were redeemed, were through the 4 letters of the name Yud Kei Vav Kei. V'nei Inyan Ze B'Mitzrayim Hayasa Tchila Levad Sheyotzu Yisrael Mehem. Ach sof hakol tzorich shi'eh sheyishletu Yisrael aleihim v'kabshum legamrei. He's saying that the Yitzim, as I said before, the Yitzias Mitzrayim was basically the breaking forth of these 4 klipot, but in order to completely dominate and vanquish them completely, so the 4 exiles also have to be vanquished. La'osid lovo, that's going to be in the future when finally at the end of this exile, we're now the exile of Rome. Omnom, hine, ze kamisha kotetz eitz acha shemaka boy haka acha haka, ad shi kotzev osa legamre. And it gives a marshal here like a tree. When you're chopping down a tree, you can't chop it down at once. What do? You give one blow after another blow. So every Pesach, so to speak, cuts down the power of the 4 exiles until finally they come to an end completely. V'chein osim onu b'chol shona. That's why we do every year. V'shona misorim b'koach ha'or she'ir. We how do you say we what's that?
Elevate.
We elevate, or we misorah, we shine like we by keeping the mitzvahs of the Seder, we cause this light to shine more brightly again. Sha'ir ubetikin nitkan oz, and then through this fixing which will be done eventually, oz in the end, mischazkim lehemshech hadova lifnim ad yigmo. In other words, that idea of cutting down this tree of Tumah slowly until it finally falls down with the coming of Mashiach. B'mheira v'yomeinu. V'hinei b'sof hakol, in the end of everything, hadalad klipos atzman, the 4 klipos, the 4 shells, his tis hafechno, will be turned around ala umos, v'tis v'ta'avdeno, and they will be destroyed, O some them. Those are what's called the 4 cups of punishment. Israel, Yeshua, Jewish people will have these 4 cups of redemption. With the final shining, so to speak, of course, he was mystical ideas of the 4 letters of Hashem's name. V'nei ma'ika hatikun shel halayla hazeh hu la'aros cherus shel hanitzachon shenetzach hatov al hara v'al yedei zeh nishba koech hasitra acher v'nachnia hachna gedola. And that's basically what we said. The ikar of this tikkun is through us doing these mitzvahs. V'hinei kazayas hamatzah sha'ochlim hu lahamshich ha'mozon. Now he's saying that, as we saw, that's the idea that why do we finish off with the afikoman, and the halacha is you're not allowed to taste anything afterwards, is that we want to be mamshich, to draw out this kedusha into the rest of the year. Hamachzik hayetzatov, to be machzik the yetzatov. So as we mentioned, omnam kadeshi yasher hatikun l'chol hashana, as he mentioned this before, for this tikkun to remain the whole year round, we need to eat the afikoman, and after that, and we shouldn't eat anything after that. That's something, as we say before, that the taste should not leave our mouths, so similarly the light should not leave us for the whole of the year. Okay, the next thing I want to look at is the Derech Hashem, which is the same idea.
What was this that we just...
This is the Maimer HaChochma by
From the Ramkhal.
Ramkhal, yeah. Now, if you turn to, some of you go to out of order, it says Perik Ches. This is really complementary information. Here, it's Perik Ches, you have it?
Yeah.
So it says the Ramkhal, and we'll finish with this. Inyan HaChometz VaMatzahu. What is the idea of the Chometz and the Matzah? Kinei Achi Yitzis Mitzrayim Hayu Yisrael Misorim B'Shah Umos Goy B'Kerev Goy. Until the Yitzis Mitzrayim, till the exodus from Egypt, the Jewish people were intermingled with the rest of the nations. Nation in the midst of a nation. That says Goy B'Kerev Goy. The Jewish people were, so to speak, caught up, intermingled, completely interspersed with all of the other nations. And with the coming up from Egypt, they were redeemed and they were separated. Until this time, b'nei Adam choshech. Until this point, all the bodies of mankind were darkness, b'choshech v'zuma, with darkness and this spiritual filth, shahaya misgaba aleim, which was dominating them, ubi yitzia, and through the Yetzias Mizrayim, nivdalu Yisrael, the Jewish people were separated, v'nizmonu gufosom, and their bodies were readied and prepared, litaher, to become pure, u'lizdamen laTorah, and to be ready for Torah and the Avodas Hashem. Ulinen zeh nitztavu b'hashbosas hachometz. This is the idea of this destruction, the removal of chometz. V'achilas hamatzah. V'hainu ki hinei alechem, the bread, shehuchan lemozon ha'odam, which is prepared for the food for man, hu mishtaveh be'emes al ha-matzav hanira ba'odam. This is really equates in truth to the desired situation for a person. Really, that's the way a man should be. Why? Ve'inyan hachimutz shehu dava tivi belechem. That's something natural in the bread in order for it to become bread. Shi'eh kal, it should be easy to digest. V'tov v'tam, and the taste should be good. Hinei gam hu nimshach lefi achok harui ba'odam. This is also the way things normally should be. In other words, a man is supposed to have a yetzer hara. He's supposed to have these things naturally. V'gam hu tzarech shi'eh boy a yetzer hara v'hanatia hachumrius. He also has to have this yetzer hara, and as he said, this physical tendency. And that's the way the rest of the year, that's the way things are supposed to be. That's why you'll ask me, I thought somebody will ask, well, why, if matzah is so great, why don't we eat matzah all the year round? The answer is that's not the way we're supposed to be. Bread is natural. Bread is the way we're supposed to be. However, says the Ramkhal, omnam, lizmana miyuchad, for a special time, umushua, and a measured amount of time. Hutzrecho Yisrael, the Jewish people, were required, lihimana, to hold back mina chometz, from chometz, ubelizoin mematzah, and to be nourished by matzah, the matzah alone. Liost, in order that should be ma'atim ba'atzmam koyach, that they should encourage, nurture in themselves the power, that in order they should mematim, they should reduce in themselves the power of the yetzer hara, v'anatia chumrius, and the desire for, and the physical inclination. V'ahigbir ba'atzmon ha-hiskarvus el ha-ruchonios, and they should raise up inside themselves their closeness to spirituality. V'a'ulam, however, shi'ezonu kach tomid yevsha, as I said before, to be nourished in such a fashion all year round, constantly, that's impossible. Ki ein zeh ha-nirtza b'olam hazeh. That is not the desired state in this world. Ach, hayomim ha-mushorim, for these measured days, 7 days. Lezeh, for this rui, it is fit, sheyishmeru zeh ha'inyan, that this matter should be guarded and carried out, obviously. Sha'al yidei zeh, because through this, Ya'amdu b'madrega, they will stand, or they will, I think it means they'll remain on this madrega which is fit for them. V'nizeh ika inyono shel Chag HaMatzos. This is the main idea of the Chag HaMatzos. V'shar mitzvahs halayla harishona, and the other mitzvahs of the first night, kulam, all of those inyonim pratim are individual ideas and matters. Mekablim lepirte haga'ula hahi, which are magbilim, which are parallel to the individual details of the geula hahi, as we said, those 4 exiles. Now, this is basically what we wanted to get to. That the Seder inculcates, changes us physically. It's not commemorative, it's actual. It's something which we don't understand. It's a mystical change. It predisposes us to be on a higher level spiritually. and the matzah, eating the matzah for the 7 days, fixes that for us for all the year round. But of course, we're not supposed to live like that the whole year round. But by going through that process of Pesach, it raises us for the whole year. And every Pesach that comes around, we get closer and closer to the Geula. Now, we did mention the 4 exiles. And I just wanted to point out that there are 4 exiles, there are 4 elements, and there are 4 negative attributes and 4 positive attributes. So let's go through the 4 exiles, as we said before. The first of the 4 exiles is Bavel, Babylon, then Porus, Persia and Media. Rome, sorry, I got it the wrong way around. Yavon, Greece, and then Rome. So the element which corresponds to Bavel is fire. Fire, earth, air and water, right? So the element which corresponds to Bavel is fire, and fire goes up. Fire connotes gaiva, kavod, and also kina. Of course, jealousy comes from the fact that a person can't bear that his kavod should be impinged upon. I'm the the greatest thing in the world, so how can anybody come along and impinge on that? So automatically I'm jealous of that person. So it's also gaiva. Gaiva wants to go up. And the opposite of that, this is the 4 cups we're talking about, is the opposite of that is anova, is humility. The next exile is Porus. Porus, the Persians, it says they were restless like the bear. That's the midah of taiva, physical pleasure. And of course, their element is water. The beginning of all pleasure is from water. And the opposite of taiva is a midah called histapek b'muat, which means to be satisfied with the minimum. The opposite of physical desire is to put up with what is sufficient, histapek b'muat. Then Yovan, Yovan is air, because if you remember, the attack of the Greeks on us was verbal. And the negative, quality of air is lashon hara, nivel peh, which is foul language. And clearly the opposite of that is dibur nochen, correct speech, encouraging speech, learning Torah, tefillah, all of these things. So these are the 4 exiles, these are the 4 elements, these are the 4 negative elements, 4 negative qualities, and 4 positive attributes. Okay, questions?
Wait, what was Rome?
Rome is Ofar. Rome, I missed that out, thank you. Rome is Ofar, Rome is earth. Fire, air and water. So Rome sinks down. That's atzlus. That's, laziness. And it's interesting, the word atzlus and atzfus in Hebrew. Atzfus means sadness, and atzlus means laziness. They only have 1 letter difference. Because if you see when a person is sad, he usually moves in a very slow way. So they're connected together. And also atzlus, probably the other way around, causes a person to feel depressed. This is something that psychology took many hundreds of years to figure out. And one of the things that psychologists do, behavioral psychologists do, when a person feels depressed, what do they tell a person to do? Go out, run away, do something. Why? Because acharei pa'ulos nimshachim levavos. So atzlus is the atzvus, and the sign of sadness is laziness. And that's the idea of sinking down, inertia, Rome. And the opposite of that, of course, the positive midah is rizus. Okay, so I hope this will give you something to think about. But the main thing I want you to take from this is that when you go to the Seder is not something which is commemorative, it's actual. The mitzvahs are not commemorative. The mitzvahs change who you are. They raise the nefesh bahamis to be on a higher level. And by doing that, of course, Bezrat Hashem, it brings the Gula Shalema, Korov.